Film is one of my favorite things. There isn't much better than kicking back after a long day and settling in for a movie. Film can send messages and express ideas, and it can change or shape our perspective on life. One thing that I've noticed over the years is how film depicts different aspects of society, whether that be a man working hard to attain his dreams or a man who's been rejected by society. Directors are great at getting us to think about the society we live in. Something that I wanted to discuss is the different levels of social class and how this is depicted in film. You typically have the three classes: upper class, middle class, and lower class. There have been so many films about the upper class, but after the upper class, who's left? The lower classes seem to be typically forgotten about. Luckily, over the last couple of years, there have been some excellent interpretations of what it means to truly be part of a minority, to live with struggle and having to learn to adapt. These films, in my opinion, are extremely effective in exposing society's flaws, along with displaying what hardships come with living like this. And this isn't just in the United States. Roma, for example, takes place in Mexico. Overall, social inequality degrades society through the incapability of mobility and the presence of racism along with capitalism. Jordan Peele's debut film, Get Out, offers a fascinating look at life through the lens of a black man in America. When Chris, played by Daniel Kaluuya, visits his girlfriend's family, he at first thinks nothing of it and is excited to get to know everyone. However, one thing leads to another, and Chris realizes that Rose's family, Rose, played by Allison Williams, holds some dark secrets. While Get Out is a horror film, it isn't your average depiction of the horror genre. Eventually, Chris realizes that he must get out and escape the estate in order to be free, upon finding out what Rose's family's intentions are. Chris's brain would be disposed of and be replaced with the brain of another white man. During the gathering scene, it turns out that there is an auction going on, and they're bidding for none other than Chris's body. Through the eyes of the Armitage family and their friends, they love the black body and their physical ability. When you put together the smarts of a white man and mix that together with the ideal body, the body of a black person, you have what in their eyes is a superhuman. Throughout the film, we can see how not only the Armitage clan, but their friends too, treat black people nearly as objects of desire. This is Peele taking things all the way back to the slavery era, where not really that much has changed. African Americans have developed a sixth sense, one that immediately intuits if a particular geography is marked by horror or an impending horror, writes Ryan Paul in his article for the Journal of the Midwest Modern Language Association. There are countless Easter eggs throughout the film, whether that be color coding, the silver spoon metaphor, Rose's Fruit Loops, and milk being eaten separately, unlike how cereal would normally be eaten. And there's others too, but none of these symbols are nearly as big as the cotton scene in the climax of the film, along with the sunken place. Chris finds himself hypnotized, about to go under for a surgery that would change everything. He was supposed to be put in a trance, but he wakes up and rips cotton out of the arms of the chair he was sitting in, putting the cotton into his ears to be deaf to the hypnotizing sounds from the TV. The scene refers to slavery and the endless amounts of cotton African Americans were forced to pick. Along with this is the sunken place, this place within himself in which Chris goes upon being hypnotized by Mrs. Armitage. He finds himself falling deeper and deeper, sinking into nothingness, screaming but to no avail. According to Jordan Peele, this serves as a metaphor, an extremely effective one, at explaining how the black community isn't heard in this country. He says, "No matter how hard we scream, the system silences us." Sean Baker's 2017 film titled The Florida Project gives us a much different perspective on what social class is, especially compared to Get Out. The Florida Project doesn't have any unusual or sinister aspects to it. It's a made-up story, but it's a reality people live in today's world. We find 6-year-old girl Mooney living with her mom in a motel a couple miles away from Disney World in Florida. Her mother, Haley, finds herself struggling to not only raise Mooney, but also provide for Mooney and herself financially. They take things week to week, living in the motel because they have nowhere else to go. And with that comes dealing with the manager of the motel, Bobby, played by Willem Dafoe. Bobby is forced to deal with everything that comes with being a manager of a motel like this. He has encounters with drug addicts, homeless people, and others in Mooney's family's case daily. With this comes needing to protect the kids that roam around the motel. The motel is set, like I said, close to Disney World, considered the happiest place on earth, where countless families roam around the parks daily, fortunate enough to spend tons of money and enjoy themselves. And then close by, poverty-stricken families who have nowhere else to go and struggle to get by. They're on the verge of homelessness. The motel might as well be a whole universe away as the pair try and eke out a living under the poverty line. This film offers a glimpse into what it's like to be to be in your childhood, living in poverty, and to just simply be a kid while your parents scrape to get by and provide for you. Similar to Get Out, this is a take on what it's like to be part of a minority that we haven't really
We're
seen
used to
before.
Hollywood filmmaking it almost insists that we have a three-act structure and character arcs, this and that. We tried to break that a little bit by we want the audience to feel as if they're actually spending the summer with Mooney, so summers aren't exactly plot-driven.
The Florida Project is a different movie in the way that it doesn't have a traditional structure. The film feels real and authentic, and I think when attempting to tell a story in which it revolves around kids living in a motel, practically homeless, with young mothers who struggle to earn money, I think it works very well. The kids live in a motel just outside of Disney World in Orlando, which is considered the happiest place on earth, and that's kind of ironic because, say, between the kids that go there on vacation versus Mooney and her friends, they live completely different lives. The styles of parenting and the lifestyles the kids and their parents live are talked about, and how living in a motel opens many doors to emphasizing the sociological themes in the story. Perhaps the most evident sociological themes here relate to raising children, particularly from a social class perspective. Middle class children are said to experience concerted cultivation, a hectic pace of structured activities said to equip the child with portfolios of experience. That comes from the popular sociology blog. This explains the messages and meanings behind the film in a more official, serious approach to the film, and it's touching on a realistic situation and how kids in these situations can be affected by them growing up in an untraditional way. Moving away from the United States, we can touch on South Korea, who too sees a social divide, this time between the rich and the poor. Bong Joon-ho's 2019 masterpiece Parasite focuses on two families in Seoul. The Kims live in a small semi-basement in the slums of the city. They fold pizza boxes for a job and they can't even do that right. Nothing seems to go their way until the Kim's son, Ki-woo, is given the offer to replace his friend as a tutor for the young daughter of the rich Park family. The Kim family realize what they have here, and one by one, each of the family members involve and intertwine themselves with the Parks. The daughter of the Kim family is hired as an art tutor. The father gets hired as a driver, and the mother as the housekeeper, all of them having replaced their predecessors. The Park family doesn't even know that they're all related, and they don't really even find out at the end of the film. Mrs. Park, married to a very successful man in Mr. Park, believes all the little tricks and gimmicks that Kims pull on her so that they can work their way into getting hired. The Park family, specifically Mrs. Park, is not very smart and they heavily depend on the lower class to do things for them. They are greedy and they have the luxury of being able to hire people to help them with their lives, and with that, the Kim family ends up taking full advantage of them. One memorable scene was when the Kims get pounded by a huge rainstorm that floods their whole slum neighborhood and puts their semi-basement apartment underwater. They scramble to get as much as they can out of there before it's too late, and they float down the flooded street on a raft carrying as much as they can. Thousands of people in the lower class, including the Kims, are forced to spend the night in a gym serving as an emergency shelter packed with people. They sleep on the floor and people fight over food and clothes. Meanwhile, for the Parks up above in the rich area, they love the rain. Mrs. Park calls it a blessing and it cleans everything up. The Parks are oblivious to the fact that the storm affected so many people and stripped them of their houses and their belongings, and the Parks think of it as nothing. At one of the biggest, best plot twists or momentum shifts I've ever seen, Mrs. Kim is supposed to be housekeeping, or in this case, house sitting for the Parks. Her husband and her two kids are there too, settling in for the night and living lavishly like the Parks do, laughing about how dumb and unintelligent the rich can be. They get a call from someone at the front door of the house. It's night and it's pouring down rain. But it's none other than the old housekeeper who recently lost her job because she supposedly fell ill, when in reality it was just the Kims exposing her allergy to peaches so that she could be replaced. She claims that she left something behind and she needed to go get it. So they let her in, and immediately she sprints down the stairs into the basement. She ends up going even lower down the stairs into this hidden bunker where all of a sudden we see a man. It's her husband who's been down there all these years, for 4 years exactly, to escape his debt and instead basically live with or under the parks for free. He's been missing the last 4 years, and that's unknown by everyone except for the old housekeeper. There's a clash between the Kims and the old maid and her husband. They go at it in the basement and fight over getting to maintain their jobs or keeping the man in the basement. All the while, the Park family has no idea about any of this as they're coming back from a camping trip vacation that ended up being a bust. They have life so easy, but they have no idea what's going on beneath them. Gyun-se praises Mr. Park for allowing him to live there the last 4 years, and Mr. Park doesn't even know him or know that he lives underneath his own home. He's driven himself insane down there to the point where he turns the lights on for Mr. Park when he walks around the house, illuminating his savior, the rich man. He bangs his head against the light switch, yelling the word respect. Similarly to Get Out, this film features many motifs, symbols, and metaphors. The bug metaphor, the scholar's stone, the bunker, the name of the film, those all come to mind, but I think there's a more important one to address, and that's the topic of smell. The Parks notice a couple times throughout the film that people working for them have this stench coming off of them. For example, the Park's son, Da-song, goes around the house smelling the Kims that work at the house, and he says that they all have the same smell. Mr. and Mrs. Park don't think anything of it. Mr. Park also talks multiple times about how he likes workers and past workers, but he doesn't like when they cross the line and go too far out of what they're supposed to do. At the end of the film, the man in the bunker, Gyun-se, escapes the bunker without anyone knowing, and he goes on a rampage with a knife. After killing the Kim's daughter, he gets stabbed with a kebab skewer, and Mr. Park goes over to his body and attempts to pull the skewer out, but he's stopped at the awful smell of the man. Little does he know that he's been living in this bunker that he didn't even know they had in his own home, and he's been praising Mr. Park for letting him live there, again without him knowing. This is ultimately why Mr. Kim kills Mr. Park. Mr. Park stopping at the awful stench of a lower-class man really set him off. He was so fed up with everything, so he killed him. The ending of the film leaves off with Mr. Kim forced to go into the bunker after having killed the famous Mr. Park, avoiding going to jail and dealing with the consequences of what he's just done. He does just what Gyun-se did, and he decides to live in the basement. The Parks move away and sell the house, and Ki-woo later puts it together that his dad is living down there, and we see a scene of a grown-up Ki-woo who buys the house and reunites with his father. This scene is unfortunately a likely token of Ki-woo's imagination. The social wealth divide in South Korea is so big, and it would be really difficult for Ki-woo to bring himself up in society. While he does seem motivated and he has big dreams, I'm not sure it's a realistic possibility for him, given the ability to work yourself up in a society like this. The second to last scene shows Ki-woo's imagination of how things would ideally work out. He finally earns enough money to buy the house, and him and his mom move in. He talks about in his letter about all his dad will have to do when they move in is walk up the stairs. The director is trying to show that while Ki-woo has big aspirations, he's going to have to work extremely hard and make enough money to afford this house and place himself in the upper class in order to fulfill these aspirations.